Hey everybody, Brendan here, welcome back to another video. Today we are finally continuing on with covering all of my tournament games. Right now, in this one, it was played in February of 2023, so quite a while ago. There's a lot of games in 2023 still to cover. I'm actually playing against Aaron Mendez, who some of you may know is actually one of the strongest players in the world of his age group. And yeah, so already that's kind of a crazy thing to say. In this game, he was a candidate master. I believe now he's a FIDE master. Amazing kid, but when we're playing against someone, we gotta show our all. So he played e4. I played my usual Sicilian, knight f3, d6, and d4. And of course, my opponent decided to play something different here. Queen takes d4. So this is an unusual way to take the pawn. And I've played against this variation, I believe, 3 times now, including this game. And yeah, not the best results. Generally, I get good positions out of the opening, but I'm just not playing those games well. So yeah, again though, the openings I don't think were really too at fault. I go knight c6 here. We see queen to e3. There's also bishop to b5, but this move is, even though popular, I think bishop d7 is just a very nice move to play. We get the bishop pair because they probably should take. This is the whole point of bishop e5 in the first place, to keep the queen on d4 and try to say that you don't have to admit any wrongdoing here. But of course, getting the bishop pair is quite nice. So queen e3 was tried. I played g6, setting up a little stuff here, like bishop h6 could be on the horizon. Not quite yet, though. He played h3, because bishop h6, there's queen c3. This is very annoying. And now you got to play something like e5, which you just don't want to do after bishop takes and knight takes on h6. This is just quite poor for black. So instead, I played bishop to g7. Now, after this, bishop to e2 is played, knight to f6, castles, castles, and c4. So I really don't like playing these positions as black. I don't like these Maroczy type positions at all. Mainly because it's just very hard to play. White just has to maintain everything, plays b3, a4, knight c3, bishop to d2 or b2. And just kind of relaxes. And black is really having to make some pretty accurate moves just to make sure they're not significantly worse and don't allow some sort of weird counterplay. So I was a little bit concerned here. But luckily there's a couple things that are going my way. This queen on e3 is just misplaced. It would rather be on d2 with the bishop on e3. But because the queen's on e3, this bishop might have to just go on the long diagonal here. Which is not really the normal setup, I'd say. I think the most popular one is to bring it to e3. So that's one thing going for us. I played knight to d7, just trying to open up the bishop. Maybe play knight e5 or knight c5, trying to just find any improvements I can. Maybe trade off a piece or two, because ultimately black is kind of restricted because of their space. So knight c3, I played b6, which is kind of an unusual move, but here I think it works out quite well. Bishop to b7, bishop to b2, and then I go knight d to e5. And I play kind of a shocking move after knight takes e5. Maybe it's not shocking to some of you, but I think it's interesting, but I think it's forced. And that's d takes e5. I think that if we play knight takes e5 or bishop takes e5, we're just going to get rolled over in the center. But d takes e5 actually gives us the opportunity to later play e6 and block in their pieces. So I was quite happy here. Rook f to d1, queen to b8, just keeping control over e5, making sure that nothing would go wrong there. And also, making sure that there's no rook c1 stuff next. Like, if you go here, you can imagine rook c1, knight d5 is annoying, right? So no reason to allow that. Queen b8, there's no c-file issues. Rook a c1. And I played knight to d4 here. I thought knight to d4 was just the right call. Turns out there's, kind of an interesting option with knight b5. where after takes on b5, takes, and rook to d8. White's probably slightly better here, but knight b5 is kind of an unusual move to have to make, so luckily that wasn't too bad. If I end up taking on e2 instead, queen takes e2, a6, knight c3, and e6, I feel like this is unclear. I can play queen c7 and rook d8 and try to get some things traded off, but ultimately my bishop is going to be suffering, and if I ever try to activate it with bishop h6 or bishop f8, e5 could be a weakness to worry about. I thought this was actually relatively unclear, but I would probably prefer white, honestly. So bishop to f1, now bishop to c6, with the idea of knight b5. Now I can actually take with the bishop, right? And I'm never actually too afraid of bishop takes d4, because I can always take with the pawn, play e5, and then all of a sudden I got nice amount of space. Just play something like queen b7 here and rook c8, and I quite like black at this point. So instead, knight to e2, and after knight to e2, I ended up trading. Bishop takes e2, going queen b7, just making a threat, developing, getting off the back rank finally, and forcing them to defend somehow. They played f3, and now I have time to play rook f to d8. So overall, this position's not so bad. But there's going to be some problems potentially on the queen side, especially if we get into some sort of ending. Rook takes d7, bishop takes d7, rook to d1, bishop to e6. You can imagine that if we traded off queens and rooks here, they could play something like b4, c5, and this bishop's really not in a good spot to stop this pawn from pushing, specifically on the dark squares. And if I can only really defend on the light squares, then that gives them a better chance of actually promoting a pawn. So queen c7, a4. I thought rook d8 was necessary. Rook takes d8, queen takes d8, queen to d3. I think I have to keep queens on, and that's exactly what I did. So bishop to a3, bishop to f6, and I'm still looking for potential activity. Bishop g5 I think would be nice to play, and they actually allow it with king h2, bishop g5, which I don't like too much. I think if they went back to like d2 before, would have been a little bit more challenging for me to find a way to continue. Here, b4 was played, and again, you can see that c5 is coming, so I have to be careful. I played h5 with the idea of potentially like bishop f4 or h4 types of moves, or even bishop takes, check, and bishop f4, and I noticed that there's always possibilities there. They played queen c2, bishop to f4 check now. I was thinking of h4 as well, but I thought it would be nice to provoke g3, because I wasn't sure if they wanted to play it. And if they move away, then this sacrifice looks quite tempting now. I'm not sure 100% if it works, and I wasn't sure in the game, but it's something you have to look at, and is something that I was willing to consider, because position looks a little bit uncomfortable. You can imagine something like this being played. Maybe bishop to f1, queen takes f3. And yeah, honestly, pretty happy here, because, you know, the a3 bishop is being threatened. Maybe some sort of bishop e3 check with perpetuals also being threatened, so quite happy there. They played g3, and after g3 here, I just moved my bishop to e3, and I want to play h4, and I'm also threatening h3, so they have to do something. They ended up playing bishop to f1, and I ended up getting my move h4 here. So yeah, they don't really want to push, they don't want to take, because again, especially something like this, you can imagine would be really, really nice for black. All of a sudden, it looked like black was having a lot of trouble, especially on the queen side, and now there's a bunch of counterplay on the king side. So this can't really be accepted. You can't take the pawn. It's one of those fake pawn sacrifices that aren't really a sacrifice. They ended up pinning bishop to c1, and I spent a long time calculating here. So I was looking at this move first with king takes g3, and I saw this really cool move here, and I was so close to playing it, but I just couldn't convince myself. Bishop f4 check, where after takes, king takes, and bishop takes h3. I thought this was really interesting because their king could be extremely weak, but I don't know, these pawns look scary. So I couldn't convince myself to play it, unfortunately, because I was worried maybe their king is actually somehow an asset, and if I play this incorrectly, then they could easily win this. I could see that happening. Um, and king h2, I was not really scared of. I would just play something like queen to d7 and be pretty happy with this pawn on f4. Actually, I think that's a bit of an asset. So at worst, it's unclear here, but I think that black probably has some sort of push or way to push. Nothing too crazy though. After king takes g3, or pawn takes g3, and then king takes g3, I ended up playing the move bishop to d4. So I didn't want to trade. I didn't like that option. I thought that the dark square bishop offers me a lot of counterplay against their king. So that's important to keep in mind. And whenever they try to play a move like this, I can always take it and then take on c4 here. And they can't really take on e5 because f1's hanging. And if they ever tried to do anything with a pin, bishop e6 is a problem for them. So let's just say they trade and then take on e5 here. I thought something like, I think queen f1, for example, could just be more than enough to show, yeah, there's just nothing here for them. Even if they take on e7, too many checks possible, and I don't really think that there's anything to be scared of here, because there's just too much counterplay for black. It's too confusing what's going on, and if that's the case, then yeah, we should absolutely be happy with that. And yeah, my opponent agreed, so they played bishop to a3. I played bishop to e3 with the idea of bishop f4, and things actually coalesced into a draw. Bishop c1, bishop d4, bishop to a3, and so on. I was also looking at moves like c5, trying to make that out, but it just wasn't, yeah, it just wasn't really timed well. So for example, here, if they go c5, we can take it, and I think a5, we can take it as well. Like, they just don't have the ability to push any of these pawns quite yet, just because there's annoying threats for us on the queen side. So I thought, yeah, again, at worst, I was equal, but maybe I had some sort of small pull, maybe. But I was also extremely scared of their potential counterplay. Turns out, yeah, nothing really to worry about. And actually, honestly, after the game, when I went home to look at it, I was kind of surprised to see that there were actual slight edges being shown for black, especially like with these bishop f4 ideas, which I couldn't convince myself on playing. But yeah, this game was actually extremely like accurate from both sides, not really any mistakes or anything, so there weren't any real honest chances, I'd say, from this one. But yeah, that kind of covers it for this game. I think it was quite interesting, especially with this idea of d-takes and how it actually ended up working out in the end. And also how they had this idea of knight b5. If we go all the way back here, there was this potential of playing knight to b5 in these positions, which I thought was quite interesting. And yeah, again, knight takes b5 would be quite bad, but it's hard to evaluate this position, I'd say, with e6 involved. It's hard to say who I would take. I think I would prefer white though. Yeah, but yeah, fun game. And now he's going to be better than I will ever be at this game. So draw them while you still can is, I think, Ben Feingold's motto. So that's exactly what I did. And yeah. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next tournament game. Hopefully later this week, actually. All right. Bye, guys.